from Music for All and presented by Yamaha. It's Teaching Social Emotional Learning Through Music, a practical web series for all music educators, embedding SEL into music education. On this episode, we welcome educator Matthew Arau. Please welcome our host of Teaching Social Emotional Learning Through Music, Scott Edgar.
Hi everybody, I'm Scott Edgar. Welcome to our next episode of Teaching Social and Emotional Learning Through Music. You know, we always say that we have some of the best on this show. And I can't believe it took us this long to have the incomparable Matthew Arau join us. This is the person who is everywhere, and we are so honored to have him here. Matthew, thanks for joining our show today.
Scott, it's a true pleasure and honor. The honor is all mine, believe me.
So tell us a little bit about this being everywhere. You know, we say that SEL is a buzzword. Your world of mindfulness has taken off astronomically. So what's it like to be out there sharing your important message to everybody these days?
Well, first of all, you know, it's really incredible to get to connect with so many people, as you know, and since when the pandemic hit, the move to reaching people via technology in a different platform, much as like we're communicating today, did change everything. And in some ways, it allowed us to reach more people. Rather than being on site in one location, speaking to one school or one school district, we were able to bring people from not just the United States, but all over the world. And that's been really, really exciting. And I think what's happened is our messages have really resonated with people during what I call the global pause, you know, beginning in March 2020. I thought about what an opportunity we had to pause and reflect and in the silence, think about what we have been doing, what we are doing, and where we could go in the future. And for me, I don't know about our listeners, but I started feeling a deeper sense of gratitude for like the little things in life, the things that I have, even my breath. And mindfulness takes us back to our breath and being present. And I thought, man, in my life had been moving so fast, you know, and it just, even when I was a teacher in the public schools, you know, those 4-minute passing periods, just beeline to get something done in that 4-minute passing period. And oftentimes not even taking the time to breathe for myself. And mindfulness for me has allowed me to become present, to be fully aware and appreciative, and to be able to share how mindfulness can help each of us as an individual find our center, to ground ourselves, and to really literally just to breathe so that we can be at our best for those closest to us, our loved ones, our family members, but also so we can be fully present for our students. And I think this message has really resonated with others as they've also tried to be or tried to find a place for themselves to work through the stress, anxiety, sense of loss, the uncertainty, the grief that we've, and to some extent, the trauma that we've all gone through. And mindfulness, like SEL, is a pathway forward.
Matthew, brilliant. And so much of what you're saying, I know, is just front of mind for so many teachers who are out there. You know, I think back to my days as a K-12 band director and what that looked like. And one of my claims to fame in my family is that I'm the fastest eater. And I attribute it back to that lunch period that I had to go to the bathroom, eat lunch in 5 minutes. And, well, that's just kind of how I go these days. So, you know, as you say, mindfulness, you know, I think there are a lot of actually misconceptions around mindfulness, what it is, what people think that it is. So as this becomes this buzzword that is of value, very similarly to how SEL has buzzworded and people are understanding it and misunderstanding it. So just at a 40,000-foot view, Matthew, what is mindfulness and why is it important for us?
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate you asking that question. I think when we think of mindfulness, we may have an idea in our head, a preconception. We may imagine someone seated cross-legged, meditating for hours at a time, and actually that is part of mindfulness. But mindfulness is more than just our image of meditation, because I think as music teachers we think, oh, I don't have time for that. I don't have time. I'm already so busy. I'm barely getting out the door on time and rushing into my classroom, and understand that life is so fast paced. But mindfulness itself is about heightening our awareness of all of our senses. And it begins with this idea of focusing on our breath, not just because our breath is essential to life, which it is. It brings in oxygen and exhales carbon dioxide. It allows us to inhale what we want to bring in to our life and exhale all the toxic and stress and anxieties that we want to get rid of. That's important, but it's about the focus. It's about focusing in on your breath to begin with, because that allows us to be fully present as you're just sensing that the feel, the sound, the temperature, and even so much the taste of your breath in your nose, at your mouth. It allows you to then become more aware of your body and noticing where tension is being held, and then breathing into your body. And then what happens is, beginning with a process of meditation in the morning, which is just merely a practice. Meditation is merely a practice to allow us to be more mindful in the rest of our life. And I always share that mindfulness is a practice. And that's the bridge for all of us as music teachers, right? Is that it's a practice. We don't master mindfulness. I practice mindfulness. I will never master it. I will never be at the summit of mindfulness. What people oftentimes have this misnomer is that the goal of meditation is to eliminate thought and to enter this zone of just blankness. I just want to share that's not going to happen. Right? When you realize that it's about observing your thoughts, noticing your thoughts, and then just letting them go and returning to your breath. And if we can begin this practice in the morning, then we can apply this idea of being fully present in the moment throughout our day. And hey, how many teachers, you're multitasking, right? We're all multitaskers, even though it's been proven that we can't technically multitask, but we do, right? And we'll be doing emails, a student will come in and talk to us. And how many of us are just like, sure. Yep. Right. And the phone's ringing, all these things. Mindfulness shares that, put the email away, turn to our student, be fully present, be fully engaged. Even in rehearsals, how many of us are thinking about where we're going to go to next, but we miss being fully aware in the moment. And there's so much more to mindfulness, but I'll turn this back over to you, Scott, because I've shared quite a few ideas.
Matthew, so powerful in this idea of presence. And I think of, you and I both work in higher education, preparing next generations of teachers. And I think of how we navigate working with our next generation of music teachers and ensembles. And we encourage them to always think about the next step. We encourage them to always play chess and think 3 steps ahead. And I wonder if this needs to be a reframe in how we start to think about how we're navigating space. Yes, we always want to be prepared, so we're not, but we certainly want to be in a space of being present with the students when that teachable moment arises.
Yeah, absolutely. I think thinking about past, present, and future is fascinating to discuss, because in the research of being a conductor, for example, that's actually one of the unique aspects of our field. And both of us are conductors, and many of your listeners are conductors. And when they've studied brains of conductors, they've noticed that we're firing, and our whole brain is being engaged. And we're one of the only professions that truly is operating in past, present, and future simultaneously, because we're evaluating what just happened. We're listening in the moment, but we're also always ahead because we have that vision of what we're creating. We maybe measures, phrases ahead in our mind. But so all of this is happening simultaneously. The challenge is that in life, often we find when we obsess about the past, that's where we often, that's where we feel guilt sometimes for things didn't go well, sometimes even shame from the past. The future is often where worry comes from. We worry about things that are out of our control. But as we dive into mindfulness, we understand that the present is truly the only moment we ever have. This moment, now it's gone. This moment now it's gone. And life is a series of moments, but how many of us miss those moments because we're either in the past or the future? And when we can be fully present, we find that we can slow our heart rate down. Literally, our just a slow inhale through your nose and then exhale out your mouth. Even a slow inhale in your nose and out your nose slows our heart rate down and allows our mind and body physiologically to be able to respond in a manner that I like to identify as the best version of myself. And sometimes slow is fast. Isn't it interesting? You got to go slow in order to move fast.
Matthew, so good. And we've heard you talk about breath a lot so far, and it seems like that is just something that is central to mindfulness. And, you and I have talked a little bit about this, but breath has been front and center the last 2 years. I mean, we talk about breath and I Can't Breathe with George Floyd's death. We talk about breath as literally being poison amidst the pandemic and us needing to wear masks because we're worried about what our breath could do for somebody else. And yet, breath is the lifeblood of music. It's what we use to create our voice. It's what we use to create sound on instruments. Even if we're doing strings, we breathe together, so we play together. So this idea of breath, I think a massive reframe about the value of it, of centralizing power of it, is really necessary.
I agree. And the breath is fascinating to look into. And it's one of those things that we often take for granted. We'll certainly say it's involuntary. We just breathe. And fortunately we do that. We have to be thinking about our breath all the time because there's a lot of many other things to breathe or just to think about. But we on average breathe 25,000 inhales per day, and on average 670 million breaths in a lifetime. Isn't that powerful? But we don't often think about how we breathe. And as a musician, we've spent maybe more time focusing on breath than others, whether you're a vocalist, instrumentals, a wind musician, but even string musicians and percussionists breathing for the phrase, right? Right? And how the inhale affects the exhale. And we can even breathe in emotion. And this is what I love about the SEL idea is when you inhale an emotion, your exhale will actually communicate an emotion. And I remember when I was about 18, 19 years old, when I first started my saxophone studies at Lawrence University Conservatory, where I'm now a professor. And my saxophone professor, we were talking about putting emotion into the sound. And it was such a revelation that I could feel something and literally change my tone. And that was through the breath. And so I think of how the quality of our inhale affects the exhale. And the exhale is where the tone, the sound, the song comes from. And I've also learned that if we breathe tightly or up high, or we breathe through our mouth all the time, it can actually have dangerous health consequences for us. And so when you begin to realize that breathing deeply and breathing in your nose, inhaling in your nose, leads to such a healthier well-being for all of us. Now the breath goes beyond just playing and singing our instruments, but it goes into our whole quality of life.
Matthew, I love it. So for our listeners, guilty as charged. Matthew and I are friends. And yesterday, before we recorded this, we spent some time talking about another project. And Matthew was talking to me about the powerful nature of breathing through your nose and how, yes, that works in music, but it also works in a lot of other aspects. So I went for my daily bike ride and I tried to force myself to breathe through my nose that entire ride, Matthew, it's hard.
I'm telling you what, I'm not there yet. And I've always, like, growing up, I felt like I always had a stuffed nose, and I do have, one of those, what do they call, deviated septums, to a certain degree. And I haven't had the surgery, but once I learned the power of nose breathing, I'm really working on it. It is something that you can retrain your mind and body to, as you use it more. It works out really well. I actually just learned recently that in the Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu over 2,500 years ago, he was actually discussing that inhaling in our mouth as a normal course is what they call, I think the phrase is Ni Qi, which, and Qi we know is energy, but Ni Qi is adverse breath. And that you want to avoid inhaling your mouth. And of course, as musicians, we inhale our mouth. But anyways, the breath to me is fascinating because it's the breath of life. We bring in oxygen. Inspire is to breathe, right? And we inspire others. And I think about that. What we focus on in our inhale is going to impact our exhale. And of course, as you know, that's such an important part to me. I think of it as the upbeat is the inhale, and the downbeat is the exhale. And even as conductors, we use that inhale and all that information's in our upbeat, leading to impacting the downbeat. And then, of course, as a mindfulness teacher and a practicer, I'm always thinking about the power of my thoughts and how the thoughts impact so much. Like my attitude, what I focus on is contagious. That's powerful. And then I get on a tangent and think, oh my gosh, as conductors, you talk about communication, and the word conductor, about conductor of energy. And so if I'm coming to rehearsal with enthusiasm and this feeling of joy and appreciation, and now I have the power to conduct and communicate, I can literally send out how I'm feeling to an ensemble. And that's powerful stuff.
100%. I love when someone, as you just did twice with inspire and conductor, gives me a little bit of the etymology of the word, and it totally just blows my mind. It's like, wow, I've never thought about conductor in terms of energy, and it's right there at the tip of all of our noses. So thank you for making that just top of mind. Along with that, Matthew, and we've hinted at this a few times, but one of the things that I preach is that SEL isn't something that you do the first 5 minutes of class. SEL is something that needs to be part of your entire culture of teaching. And I assume that is powerfully present in mindfulness too. That yes, we could do breathing exercises to start our time together and check the box and move on. But can you give us a little bit more of a bigger picture of how mindfulness and music education can live together so it becomes part of the culture?
Love it. Because I agree with you that is really important. And I do engage with some mindful breathing at the beginning of rehearsal to help with that transition, right? And I think if our students are coming from other classes, chaotic hallways, and in virtual learning, who knows, what's happening behind the scenes. They're logging into a classroom on Zoom or Google Meet, and a mindful breath, which can be as simple as breathe in your nose for 4 and out your nose for 4. And just relaxing the shoulders and the neck, and then leading the class through that again. In your nose for 4 and out your nose for 4. And just kind of shaking it out and honoring the space that we're all coming in together. And for me, I actually believe that when we breathe together, we feel this connection together. It's fascinating as human beings. It's almost like if you could get your heartbeats to beat at the same rate and feel this physiological connection. So I love to actually begin rehearsals with a breath. Sometimes I'll begin with gratitude. And gratitude, by the way, is absolutely part of mindfulness, and a focus on gratitude, because mindfulness is the opposite of being mindless. So interesting. Mindful, mindless. And so sometimes it helps us to understand what something is by thinking about its opposite. So if we move through life mindless, we probably aren't going to think about what we're appreciative of. We'll just kind of go about aimlessly, perhaps as one of those silver balls in a pinball machine, just bouncing through life, unguided, without direction or mission. But if we can choose our thoughts, which we all can, and I love to quote Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, psychiatrist and survivor of the Holocaust. And when he was freed, he wrote this profound, meaningful work that's been translated into so many languages. And he shared that man's last freedom is our ability to choose our response. This is ability to choose our response to any situation. So for me, being mindful is choosing our thoughts, choosing what we focus on, choosing our response. And so bringing gratitude in a rehearsal is really important to me, but not just at the beginning. So if gratitude is important to you, and I love to think of this idea of creating a culture of gratitude, bring gratitude into your rehearsal. Make that part of the feedback language that you bestow upon students, but also create this culture where it's normal for students to share appreciation for each other. And we've all been in those rehearsals where there's, the shuffle on the floor with the feet after, a soloist, where there's that sharing of love and acknowledgement of the efforts that other students are enacting. Bringing emotion and feeling into rehearsal as a matter of course. It's just, of course we do this. It's normal. I know sometimes we feel like, oh, we got to get the notes and the rhythms, and then we'll get the dynamics. You almost like have this order of events. Okay, rhythm, notes, dynamics, watch me on the rallentando. We have this kind of, right, all these things. And then the week before, we're like, oh, I better do some phrasing. And then maybe like the day before the big concert, hey, let's read the program notes. And let's start talking about emotion. For me, an SEL rehearsal and a mindful rehearsal make feeling and emotion the thing. What are we doing here? What are we expressing? And we don't need to wait until our students get to grade 3, grade 4, grade 5 literature to talk about that, right? We could talk about the magic of music in the early years. And so I think I see it as being integrated and woven, social emotional learning and mindfulness woven and always directing listening. That's really important. How many times do we say listen, but we're not specific about what to listen for? I think mindful listening is really guided and present moment and heightened awareness. But listening is just one of our senses. What about the sense of touch? Becoming more aware of how our instruments feel. I like to even think about being fully aware when you're putting your instrument together and putting it away, and almost treating our instruments as sacred is a mindful approach.
And so often we rush. It's like, I gotta put it together, and I think it's the speed, it's the rat race, it's what we're all going through. Matthew, you during that last comment that you gave us, there are so many things that when you're talking about mindfulness, and you're doing a beautiful job of linking it to SEL, I'm hearing SEL screaming. You talk about common breath, you talk about common heartbeat. What I'm hearing is belonging. I'm hearing creating this space where we're coming together, where there's trust, where there's unity, and that we have a common mission. When you talk about choosing your response, I'm hearing agency. I'm hearing students saying, my voice matters. I'm going to choose this response, and it's going to affect meaningful change. And then everything that you're saying, you've said awareness so many times, and this directly links to so many key tenets, whether it be social awareness or self-awareness. So, Matthew, any other thoughts about these inroads of these two massive buzzwords, right? Because I think so many teachers are out there, okay, so is this SEL? Is this mindfulness? Is this trauma-informed? Is this PBIS? And it just gets gobbledygoopy. So any additional thoughts to how SEL and mindfulness start to come together?
Well, I just love it. And as educators and in the education profession, we're great at labeling things, aren't we?
We're too good at labeling.
It's got to be in its box, and we don't want to, step out of that box, and we want to identify and characterize as something. And I would share that none of these labels like don't possess them. like don't say, well, I'm an SEL teacher, I'm a trauma informed teacher, I'm a mindful teacher. You know what? All of these are about becoming a mindful, fully aware, respectful, compassionate, empathetic human being that recognizes that we're not alone, that we are part of something grander than ourselves. And that's what I love about music teaching and the creation of ensembles and the creation of community. And so many of us refer to our ensembles as the band family. Am I right? I mean, how many students say, oh, I'm part of my orchestra family, my choir family, my mariachi family, because that you feel such deep connections. Why do we feel such deep connections? I think part of it is because through art, through music, we are at our most vulnerable. And when we are at our most vulnerable, like truly, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about the feelings that I get in rehearsal and playing music myself, and that deep connection to the human heart and my deep feelings that I wouldn't know how to share these with words. But hey, give me my saxophone and let me have an inhale, and let me just express how I'm truly feeling. And when you have a room full of people playing from the heart, there's a magic that happens, and we don't always know what it is, but we know it makes us feel really good. It's the way the marching band students feel when they give their all, and they like leave it on the field, and you walk off the field and you circle up and you just get everybody together, silent, and then you just say like, how do you feel? And the students like, amazing, right? And amazing. And then you start, okay, let's talk about the show, and students will start sharing. How many times do students cry? For me, that's some of the like deepest memories that I have of working with the Loveland High School marching band in Loveland, Colorado, was that expression of vulnerability that would lead to tears and hugs, because they had really poured all of their heart and soul, all their emotions and feelings into the music. And that's magical.
And that level of vulnerability doesn't happen on accident. It's something that needs to be fostered, because I think, unfortunately, you and I both know of counterexamples in the field where that vulnerability isn't nourished or encouraged. And those students, they might be achieving just a phenomenal product, but at what cost?
Yeah, you're right. It is very true that we as teachers have so much influence on the culture that's created. For me, when I listen to a band, and I'm often an adjudicator or a clinician, and I'll be brought in and maybe do an all-state concert band festival. And I know, Scott, you've done this as well. And you listen to all these groups, you can almost tell what happens in rehearsal. You can listen and say like, that's a perfect performance, right? Every note, every rhythm, right? But you're left cold, right? You're left feeling cold. And then, you may have the other extreme where the students are so excited. They're so excited. And you can tell there was a lot missing in that rehearsal too. And of course, what we want is to bring them together. And I think that's what, I don't think it's not one or the other. I think that's really important. Oftentimes as teachers, we think, well, that's the latest trend. That's the latest trend. That's the fad. And that word, that's going to be around for a couple of years. We're going to do some PD, but can I just get back to what I've always done? And I want to share with you, the human heart is not going away. The human heart is not going away, my friends. The human heart is not a fad. And the need for connection, love, and belonging has been here as long as human beings have been here. And I didn't learn that really until I read Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, when she just outlined that for me. She said, as human beings, we are hardwired for love, connection, and belonging. And it was like I was struck by lightning when I read that, because it clarified so much for me. I said, oh my gosh, that's why I feel a certain way under certain conductors. Like I played and studied under conductors that made emotion and connection with us, and the eye contact, and eyes are the window to the soul, right? And where your heart goes, energy flows. And I'd also played and studied under conductors that seemed to almost like look above the musicians, had the music in their mind, but there wasn't that sense of connection. And I left feeling almost incomplete, disconnected. And I realized you could be an incredible musician, but if you can't connect, maybe that's why I love, like Gustavo Dudamel or Alondra de la Parra. Why? Because they wear their heartstrings on their sleeve, right? It's just like, whew, boom. And how could you not play with emotion? They're making the feeling, the expressivity central to every moment. They're not saying, oh, we're going to practice SEL for these 3 minutes. it's part of who they are. It's almost they live who they are, and it happens naturally.
That modeling piece. And, just from a preparation standpoint, we often say, get your eyes out of the score, right? Get your eyes out of the score. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Some of them are technician based, but a lot of it is, how do you connect to the musicians in front of you that we're making music with, not making music to, making music with, if our head is down? You said the eyes are the window to the soul, and we have to share that in our rehearsals.
Yeah, we have to model that. I learned a lot from a conductor. I was at a couple conducting workshops with him as a younger teacher. His name's James Jordan, conductor of Westminster Choir in Princeton, New Jersey. And he wrote a book called The Musician's Soul and followed up in Musician's Spirit, Musician's Breath. And he's really known as a phenomenal choral conductor, but his writings apply to all of us. And I want to share what he writes about in The Musician's Soul, and something he shared with the group of conductors studying with him back in Greeley, Colorado, University of Northern Colorado. We used to have yearly conducting workshops, and he was a guest there. And he talks about a concept called mimetics that I think is really applicable as we're thinking about SEL and mindfulness. I'll just share what it is here. So as a conductor, we study our music and we have this vision of what we want the music to sound like, right? And that's the ideal, right? Hopefully we're investing the time. I know sometimes we're flying by the seat of our pants and open the folder or the cupboards and like, oh, let's try that piece. Boom, right? Okay, but let's talk in an ideal world where we've taken the time to internalize the music and to have an aural image of what we want to create in those rehearsals. And then we step up to the podium and we get the downbeat and we start rehearsing. And the sound that comes up to us is not what we're hearing in our mind. It's not the ideal. Well, how do we naturally respond? Well, one of the ways we often respond is from a feeling of, it hurts, actually. It can be painful. And it's very easy for us to get into what I'll say is the left column, this column where we may feel anger, disappointment, and almost get to this point of like feeling of confrontation. And it's natural. So if you feel that way, don't beat yourself up. But I'm going to share an alternative way of thinking about it. And this is where a mindful approach is very effective. What James Jordan shared is, he said, rather than accepting our normal human reaction, because basically he describes it as being envious of the sound we want versus what we're hearing. Okay, that's the left column. But when we choose in that millisecond, we have a millisecond to choose how we respond. And if you could just pause for a moment and then choose your response, the column on the right, we don't talk about this a lot in music education, but James Jordan is courageous. And he shared, the column on the right is coming from a place of love. When I heard that, I was, in my mid-20s, I thought, whoa, love? I never thought about that before in rehearsal. And he said, love and support and encouragement. And we teach the students where they're at. And when we're in that zone, we're now in a collaborative rehearsal rather than confrontational rehearsal. But how many times have we felt that feeling of confrontation. Okay, if we're honest, you pass out the music, you're like, okay, everybody's in a good mood, possibilities, midpoint, heading up to the concert. Okay, we're starting to get into the details. But how many of us, the week before the concert, all of a sudden, stress, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, absolutely. But James Jordan shares, if we can begin from this place of choosing our response and choosing love over anger, choosing collaboration over confrontation, we can affect the tone of the rehearsal, the culture of our ensemble. And that's really stuck with me. And furthermore, he taught that when he steps up to the podium, he literally imagines that he's embracing the ensemble, figuratively, right? And that's powerful when you think about it. A group embrace.
When I'm hearing you talk about this, and I'm hearing James's voice, and I'm hearing your voice, one in each ear, and it is just such a powerful reframe. And guilty as charged. The closer we get to the concert, the grumpier I get. And I think a lot of it is that pressure of perfection. And, what is the value of correct notes and correct rhythms when the experience that facilitates it is not healthy? Matthew, I know yesterday we spent some time speaking about that these last few months, last 16 months, have been really, really tough, especially for our students who have missed developmental opportunities, missed socialization, and that healing needs to happen, that we all have healing to do. And even, just this episode's going to be airing in early 2022. So we don't crystal ball what we're going to be looking at in 2022, but some ideas from you I think would be really helpful on how, through our music education classrooms, we can truly help our students heal.
Well, Scott, I believe that music rooms, music classrooms across our country and around the world are the places where we can together truly heal. And I do believe that it's a together process, that we have experienced this together. And it actually gives us this rare opportunity where we have this common experience that we can now talk about together and dig into those feelings and how disconnection has felt. And when we focus on the opposite of what we want, it can more clarify our true desires. Isn't that interesting? If you've experienced pain, right, then you can truly appreciate, when you feel better, or if you've experienced sickness, you appreciate health more. If you've felt disconnection and the pain that causes, you will be more fully invested in going after creating community and connection in family. Now, it's very possible that you may be having conversations you've never had before with your students. This could be new, I'll say even scary territory, because it's out of our comfort zone. We didn't talk about this stuff when I was trained as a music educator. I was all about the conducting and getting that perfect performance. Sure, I want my students to have a good time, but it was really about the literature and performing at a really, really high level. And now we're going to have these almost uncomfortable conversations about something that is real. But what's powerful is that when we start to talk about feelings and emotions and bring it into the rehearsal and making it okay to dig deep within, we have much more to give our music. And see, music is a vehicle to communicate these feelings that we're holding within. And in some ways, you don't have to even speak about it. You can bring literature into your rehearsal that allows students to express how they feel. And then you can use that as an on-ramp. To quote my friend Jared Cassidy, Lexington High School band director, he always says, this music is an on-ramp for deep discussions. And in his case, he was working on a piece by Omar Thomas, and he used that as what he said as an on-ramp to have discussions about discrimination and equity and social justice. And I think we can, our music classrooms invite this feeling and conversation.
And just to draw the connection, the July 2021 episode of this series has Jared and his students talking about the process of engaging with the Thomas of Our New Day Begun and what that resulted in with a powerful equity statement and elevating student voice and putting that front and center. And how Jared, in the trenches of a K-12 band program, a high-performing K-12 band program, made time for this and still had the musical excellence and got to that deep space. When that's centric, when that's at the space that we're working through, the process itself is going to be healing.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think as human beings, we want to have purpose and meaning for anything that we invest in. And oftentimes we forget to share what the deeper purpose of doing something is. We hand out the music, okay, let's play it as well as we can. And the students might often think, well, that's our purpose. Play the piece as well as we can. But when there's something deeper behind the composition, the inspiration of the composer, particularly a piece, you know, of our New Day Begun, or a piece like American Elegy, or any piece that has a deeper meaning to the students, the engagement, the intrinsic motivation, the edge of their seat, the extra research, the bringing in other recordings. Did you know this? Have you heard this? And the discussions that happen, it leads to such an exciting rehearsal space that ultimately will also be broadcast and shared and felt by the audience. We all know those really powerful performances where the piece ended and the audience was still. There have been some performances I remember in my life, and one of them was Baylor University at Midwest Clinic, and I just remember the emotion was unbelievable because the ensemble was so invested. I think the crowd, it was thousands and thousands of people. I think we didn't clap for at least a minute, just silence before. And then, you know, that crescendo, right? And that's awesome. And that's what I think our goal can be, is to have that incredible musical excellence coupled with full investment of the human heart.
And Matthew, you know, that moment, and we always know that there's someone who's going to clap too early, and we'll forgive them. But yes, but you know, I think that's a testament to people not always being comfortable with emotion, people not being comfortable with silence, that we have to fill silence, and that sometimes just, okay, we can sit here with that and being comfortable in that space. So Matthew, we talked about healing students, but we know that it was tough for teachers too. And, you know, one of my things is that if you don't have something in your life that is more important than your work, than your job, that you are in danger of burnout. You are in danger of, you know, being victim to a profession that is not easy. So I'm going to shift this a little bit, Matthew, and I'm going to ask you, what are things that you're passionate about in your life that have nothing to do with music education?
Fantastic. Well, Scott, I'm an avid reader.
All the references today, we got that, and you know, just, but you know, it has informed so much. So we're thankful that you are.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild, and so sometimes I'm working on like 3 books at a time. So books invigorate me, but I tend to read personal growth, personal development books like that. And I'm fascinated with the topic, and I'm always reading something, whether it's from, you know, a psychologist or a business leader or an historical figure. I'm always taking that in, and I should share, thinking about how this does apply to music education. So maybe that's not a fair one to share, because my mind is always, I'm like obsessed with how we can, you know, do better, how we can improve, how we can go to the next level. but here's things that I love to do that I do daily. So in the warmer months, I swim every day. I love to swim. So I think, taking care of myself and wellness is really important. I meditate every morning. I do yoga stretches every morning. So I do think that like taking care of myself and that wellness is an aspect. Spending quality time with my wife, Marilee, and our dog, Olive. She's the cutest 13-pound Chihuahua dachshund mix, and she's just unconditionally loving, right? And we also have 2 sugar gliders. Their names are Littlefoot and Flash, and they're nocturnal, so they're a lot of fun. So I love the outdoors. I wish I spent more time getting out on the trails and all that, but I do anytime I can get in the outdoors, I love the outdoors. So nature is really close to me, and I do go on walks in our neighborhood as much as I can. Yeah, I'm not like a woodworker or like a train collector, or I don't have any of those like really cool hobbies that some people will talk about, like other obsessions. I guess but the personal growth, personal development, all of those things in that area, I just can't get enough.
Matthew, the next time that, for whatever purpose we do a chat, I think we should just get someone with a video camera and just get out into the woods and just talk and have them go backwards. We'll make sure they've been marching band so they can backward march, and then we just chat.
That would be great. That'd be so great. In person, in nature. Let's both do that.
100%. Awesome. Matthew, as we come to the end, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners of this fantastic episode?
Well, take care of yourself. Do take care of yourself. I think I've spent so much time in personal reflection about that. We move really quickly as music teachers, and that's been celebrated, and that's okay. I have nothing against hard work. Hard work is what's gotten us to this level, and attention to detail and going the extra mile for our students. But how many of us felt like we were pouring from an empty cup, like we were drained and we were depleted? And that wasn't just the pandemic, folks. That's been an accumulation of our lifestyle and what we've celebrated really over time. And hey, as a competitive marching band director, I was there, school 6:15 a.m., sometimes getting home at 10 p.m. on weeknights. And, the marching band festivals rolling into the high school at 1 a.m. And then we would still go to the band room and watch the video, and the parents would come pick up their students at 1:30 in the morning on a Saturday night. Right. And those things aren't going away. They're not necessarily going away, but we have to find ways to tend to ourselves. And that's why even a mindful breathing practice, and it could be 5 minutes of meditation in the morning, fantastic, but also using some breathing strategies like the 4-7-8 breath in between classes. And it's just a simple in your nose for 4, hold for 7, out your mouth for 8. This is often known as the 4-7-8 breath, but I renamed it the serenity breath. And teachers that are using this breath, it's really changed their life. How can a breath change somebody's life? Well, here's how. Let's try it together. Is that okay, Scott? We'll do it together. All right. So in our nose for 4, hold for 7 without any stress, just calm, hold, and then out our mouth for 8. And to get to an even higher level, anchor your tongue between the roof of your mouth and your front teeth, right on the top there. Okay. So let's try it. Here we go. And in and hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out our mouth. And relax. 3 times in a row. And no matter what happened in the class before, no matter if your breathing's gotten really tight and you're feeling anxious, this will bring everything down. You'll be able to step into that classroom, revitalized and rejuvenated and ready to be your best self and to conduct with that energy that you want to communicate. And so I guess my final words are, in order for us to bring mindfulness, to teach fully with SEL and mindfulness being integrated into what we do, we need to give ourselves and invest in ourselves a practice of treating ourselves with compassion and care. Pema Chodron said that in order for us to truly show compassion to another, it begins with us showing compassion to ourselves. Honor yourself, be kind to yourself, and forgive yourself. And when we can do that, you'll see real change moving forward.
It does start with compassion and care always, doesn't it? It starts with the relationship. Matthew, this has been fabulous. Our listeners are better for it. I'm better for it. Whenever I talk to you, I come out with just so many things. My head swims with all of these ideas and thinking that I always leave with more questions than answers. But certainly your wisdom and your own grace that you've provided for the profession. So on behalf of a grateful profession, thank you for everything you are doing and continue to do. We are better for it. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for taking some time out of your day to talk with us. Please, my friend, until our paths cross again, be well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Bye-bye. Music for All's mission is to create, provide, and expand positively life-changing experiences through Music for All. Our vision is to be a catalyst to ensure that every child across America has access and opportunity to participate in active music making in their scholastic environment. I want to thank Matthew Arau. The human heart is not going anywhere. That quote is in my brain. He has given us some tangible ideas about how mindfulness and SEL can come together to help our students heal. I'd like to thank our national presenting sponsor, the Yamaha Corporation of America. Be sure to check out the Yamaha Educator Suite at yamahaeducatorsuite.com. And I would like to thank GIA Publications for their continued support. Before we say goodbye, we are extremely grateful for any donations gifted to our nonprofit organization. If you enjoyed this program, and in order for us to continue to provide our free educational resources and advocacy materials, please consider gifting to Music for All in any amount. Please visit musicforall.org/give. For Music for All, I'm Scott Edgar. Thank you.